Tonight, we are going to leave the noise of the modern world behind. We are stepping away from the thermostat, away from the electric lights, and away from the constant hum of technology. We are traveling back, deep into the past, to stand inside a space that defined human existence for centuries. You are standing just inside the heavy, rough-hewn door of a medieval peasant's house in the dead of winter. The first thing that hits you is not a sight, but a feeling. It is a sensation that the modern world has almost entirely banished, but here it is a constant companion. It is the cold. But this isn't the cold you know from a quick walk to the car or a drafty window. This cold feels alive. It feels patient. It presses against your skin with a weight that feels almost intelligent, as if it is waiting for you to make a mistake. It does not rush in. It seeps. It slides through the invisible gaps in the timber. It creeps up through the packed earth beneath your boots, and it settles into the weave of your clothes as if it has always belonged there. Take a slow breath. The air here tastes different. It is heavy, thick with the scent of wood smoke that never fully clears, mingled with the earthy smell of damp straw and the faint musky scent of animals kept close for warmth. Somewhere in the dimness, a small fire crackles softly. It is the only sound in a world that has fallen silent under a blanket of snow. But as you stand there, letting your eyes adjust to the gloom, you realize that the fire does not banish the cold. It merely negotiates with it. It carves out a small, fragile circle of light and heat in a vast ocean of freezing darkness. You are safe here, but it is a safety that requires constant attention. There is no switch to flip, no dial to turn. Warmth in this medieval winter is not a guarantee, it is a task. It is something you must actively maintain, moment by moment, like keeping a spinning top in motion. Before you settle in, you become hyper-aware of your surroundings. You stand perfectly still because you have already learned the first lesson of this house. Movement stirs the air, and stirring the air makes you feel the chill more sharply. Your leather boots press into the floor. This isn't a floor of wood or tile. It is earth. It is the ground itself, packed hard by generations of feet, swept daily until it shines like dull pottery and scattered with a layer of straw. The cold from the frozen ground travels upward, silently and efficiently, seeking the warmth of your souls. This is the reality of medieval peasant life that history books often gloss over. We think of castles and battles, but the true history of the Middle Ages was written in rooms like this, in the quiet, desperate battle to keep the frost at bay. You begin to notice the architecture of the room, not as a matter of style, but as a matter of survival. The walls seem to lean inward, thick and heavy. The ceiling is remarkably low, hanging just above your head. You find yourself instinctively hunching your shoulders, making yourself smaller. This design is not an accident, nor is it a result of poor craftsmanship. It is a brilliant, calculated defense strategy against the winter. A lower ceiling means there is less volume of air to heat. Every inch of space above your head is a waste of precious fuel. By keeping the room squat and compact, the builders ensured that the meager heat from the hearth would stay down where the people are, rather than rising uselessly into the rafters. It creates a feeling of being enclosed, almost cocooned. To a modern eye, it might seem claustrophobic, but tonight, with the wind howling outside, it feels like an embrace. It feels like protection. The walls are thick, far thicker than modern drywall. Depending on where we're standing, perhaps in the damp hills of England or the forests of Germany, they might be made of stone, or wattle and daub, a mixture of woven wood and clay, packed with straw and animal dung. These materials were chosen for their thermal mass. They absorb the heat of the day and the fire, holding onto it jealously. releasing it back into the room with agonizing slowness. You reach out and brush your hand against the rough surface of the wall. It feels cool to the touch, but not freezing. It acts as a thermal battery, smoothing out the sharp drop in temperature that comes when the sun vanishes. And then there are the windows, or rather the lack of them. In the modern world, we prize natural light and expansive views. Here, a large window is a hole in your armor. It is a wound in the house that bleeds heat. If there is a window, it is tiny, a mere slit high up in the wall, likely covered not with glass, which is a luxury for cathedrals and kings, but with oiled cloth, or perhaps a thin, translucent piece of animal horn. It lets in a murky, diffuse light during the day, but now at night it is shuttered tight. You can see the edges of the wooden shutter glowing faintly with frost. You might have an urge to open it, to let in some fresh air to clear the smoke that stings your eyes, but you suppress that urge instantly. In this historical reality, fresh air is too expensive. It costs warmth. You trade ventilation for heat, accepting the smoke as the price of not freezing. You step further into the room, moving towards the hearth. This is the heart of the house, the center of gravity for the entire family. But the fire is smaller than you might expect. It is not the roaring, decorative blaze we see in movies. It is a working fire, built low and wide. Fuel is precious. Every log, every block of peat, every dried cow pat represents hours of labor to gather and prepare. You do not burn it for show. You burn it for survival. The flames lick sideways, hugging the coals, maximizing the radiant heat that travels to your shins while minimizing the sparks that could ignite the thatched roof above. You crouch near it, extending your hands. The warmth blooms across your palms, sharp and intense at first, then spreading slowly up your arms. But as your front warms, you feel the cold pressing against your back. This is the nature of medieval heating. It is uneven. You are never fully warm all over. You exist in a constant state of rotation, turning one side and then the other to the fire, like meat on a spit. The smoke drifts upward, lazy and gray. Without a chimney, it pools in the rafters, creating a hanging layer of haze that darkens the beams to a glossy black. You blink, your eyes watering slightly. This too is something you get used to. In fact, historians suggest that this layer of smoke actually helped preserve the house, the soot coating the timber and protecting it from rot and insects. It's a symbiotic relationship. The fire warms you, and its byproduct preserves the shelter that protects you. As you look up, you see the blackened wood, shiny in the firelight. It looks ancient and enduring. You shift your weight, and the straw beneath you rustles. That sound, the soft crunch of dry stalks, is the soundtrack of this life. Straw is everywhere. It is insulation, it is bedding, it is flooring. It traps pockets of air, creating a barrier between you and the freezing earth. Fresh straw smells sweet, like a summer field, but in the depths of winter, it takes on a musty, earthy scent. Maintaining it is a constant chore. Damp straw is an enemy. It sucks heat away from the body, so it must be turned, swept, and replaced. You realize that comfort here is not a product you buy. It is the result of labor. Every sensation of warmth you feel has been earned through physical effort. Before let's talk about the cold again, it's important to understand that for the people living here, this winter chill is not an extreme weather event. It is normal life. It is the baseline. They do not fight it with anxiety. They meet it with a quiet, practiced resignation. You notice a draft coming from the door, a thin ribbon of icy air cutting through the room. In a modern house, this would be a cause for complaint. Here, it is simply a signal to act. Without a word, someone moves to hang an old, heavy woolen cloak over the doorframe. It's a simple solution, but effective. The heavy fabric acts as a gasket, sealing the gap. The draft stops. The room feels instantly closer, tighter. This implies a kind of wisdom that we have lost, the ability to use what is at hand to solve the immediate problem of comfort. You walk the perimeter of the room. It is small. The smallness is intentional. A large room is a luxury that cannot be afforded in thermal units. By keeping the footprint compact, the heat from the fire and the heat from the bodies inside is concentrated. You can feel the difference in temperature as you move away from the center. The corners of the room are significantly colder, almost freezing. These are the storage zones, the places for tools and chests, not for people. The living space contracts in the winter. The family moves closer to the center, closer to the fire, closer to each other. The cold dictates the geography of daily life. Now look at the people. They are not running around. They are not shivering violently. They are moving. You also notice their clothing. It is not just fabric, it is a system. They are wearing layers, lots of them. Against the skin is linen, which wicks away moisture and is easy to wash. Over that, wool. Heavy, scratchy, dense wool. Wool is a miracle material for this life. It traps heat even when it is damp. It breathes. It creates a microclimate around the body. You look at the sleeve of the man sitting by the fire. The wool is thick, almost felted. It looks heavy, and it is. Carrying the weight of these clothes is a workout in itself, which helps generate body heat. But there is a logic to the dressing. The tunics are long, covering the thighs. The hose are thick. Hoods are worn even indoors, pulled up to protect the neck and ears, the places where heat escapes most rapidly. You realize that they don't take their coats off when they come inside. The concept of indoor clothing versus outdoor clothing is blurry here. You wear as much as you need to stay warm, regardless of where you are. As the evening deepens, the light from the fire turns everything into a warm amber monochrome. The shadows in the corners stretch out, long and dancing. There is a psychological aspect to this warmth as well. The darkness of winter can be oppressive, but the fire provides a focal point. It draws the eye. It is mesmerizing. Staring into the embers, you feel your breathing slow down. The frantic pace of your own life feels very far away. Here, time is not measured in minutes or seconds, but in the burn rate of a log, in the time it takes for the embers to shift, in the gradual cooling of the room as the fire burns down. You sit on a low stool. It is close to the ground, out of the smoke but near the heat. You can feel the warmth radiating from the stones of the hearth. These stones continue to release heat long after the flames have died down. They are part of the heating system. You wrap your arms around yourself, feeling the texture of the rough woolen blanket draped over your shoulders. It smells of sheep and wood smoke. It is not soft in the way modern fleece is soft, but it feels substantial. It feels like it can protect you. There is a pot hanging over the fire, suspended by a black iron chain. It bubbles gently, releasing a savory steam into the room. This is another source of warmth, internal warmth. The food here is dense. Porridge, stew, heavy bread. It sits heavy in the stomach, digesting slowly, providing a long, slow release of energy that keeps the body's furnace burning through the long night. You watch as someone stirs the pot. The spoon is wood, not metal. Metal would be too cold to the touch, or it would get too hot and burn the lips. Wood is neutral. Wood is safe. Listen to the sounds of the house. Outside, the wind might be whistling around the eaves, testing the thatch, looking for a way in. The sound is muffled, distant. The thick walls and the heavy roof dampen the noise, making the interior feel isolated and secure. Inside, there is the snap of the fire, the rustle of straw, the soft murmur of voices. But there is something else, a sound you might not have expected. From the other side of a thin wooden partition, or perhaps just from the darker end of the room, you hear the heavy rhythmic breathing of a cow. You hear the soft stamp of a hoof. The animals are in here too. This is a crucial part of the survival strategy. Livestock, cows, pigs, maybe a goat or sheep, are brought inside or kept in a byre during the winter. This isn't just to protect the animals, it is to use them. A cow is a massive radiator, generating a significant amount of body heat. By sharing the living space with them, the family benefits from that warmth. The air on that side of the room is noticeably warmer, thick with the scent of hay and manure. To a modern nose, it might be overpowering. To a medieval peasant, it is the smell of survival. It is the smell of a temperature that sits a few degrees higher than freezing. You watch as the family prepares for the night. This is a ritual in itself. There is no casual flipping of a switch and jumping into a fluffy bed. Sleeping is a communal activity. Beds are large, shared spaces. They are often elevated slightly to get off the cold floor, piled high with straw mattresses and heavy woolen blankets. In the coldest part of winter, everyone sleeps together. Parents, children, sometimes even extended family. It is a pile of humanity. The logic is simple. One body cools down, 3 bodies keep each other warm. It creates a thermal mass of human heat. You see them warming their bedding before getting in. A flat stone, heated near the fire, is wrapped in a cloth and slid between the blankets. Or a brass warming pan if they're lucky, filled with embers. This removes the initial shock of the cold sheets. It prepares the nest. You can imagine the feeling of sliding into that space, the roughness of the wool, the lingering smell of smoke, but also the incredible, overwhelming relief of shared warmth. It is a primal comfort. As the fire is banked for the night, covered with ash to keep the embers alive until morning without burning through the fuel, the light fades to a dull red glow. The room begins to cool immediately. You can feel the temperature dropping, the cold creeping back in from the corners, reclaiming the space. But under the heavy blankets, huddled together, there is a pocket of safety. Lying there in the dark, listening to the wind and the breathing of the cattle, you realize something profound about this boring life. It is entirely focused on the present moment. There is no anxiety about the distant future, only the immediate reality of the night. Is the door shut? Is the fire safe? Is everyone covered? If the answers are yes, then there is peace. There is a deep, restful silence that comes from knowing you have done what is necessary to survive the night. The darkness is absolute. Without light pollution, without street lamps, the interior of the house is pitch black, save for that single red eye of the fire. Your other senses take over. You listen to the house settling, you smell the soot and the wool, you feel the weight of the blankets. It is a sensory experience that is completely grounding. It forces you to be right here, right now. But the night is long and the cold is persistent. Survival requires checking in. You might wake up in the pitch black, sensing a shift in the temperature. You listen. Has the wind changed? Has the fire died too low? You might see a figure rise silently, a shadow moving against the faint glow of the hearth, adding a piece of turf or a small log, stirring the life back into the embers. This vigilance is not stressful. It is rhythmic. It is part of the night's cycle. You also think about the morning to come. Waking up in a medieval winter is difficult. The room will be freezing. The water in the bucket near the door might have a layer of ice on it. Getting out of under the warm pile of blankets requires willpower. But they will do it because the animals need feeding, the fire needs building, and the day must begin. They will put on their cold boots, perhaps stuffing them with a bit of fresh dry straw for insulation. They will break the ice on the water. They will breathe visible clouds of steam into their own kitchen. But for now, you are still in the evening, in the time of rest. You are observing the quiet dignity of this struggle. There is no complaining here. No one is lamenting the lack of central heating. This is simply how the world is. And because they accept it, they have mastered it. They have found ways to make the unbearable bearable. They have turned a harsh environment into a home through layers of wool, walls of earth, and the closeness of kin. As you stand by the fading fire, watching the embers pulse, you feel a strange sense of connection. Your ancestors likely lived through nights just like this. They sat on stools like these, wrapped in wool like this, watching a fire just like this one. The resilience required to survive this winter is in your DNA. The ability to find comfort in small things, a warm bowl of stew, a heavy blanket, a break in the wind, is something you still possess, even if you rarely have to use it. You look at the rough hands of the peasant resting on his knees. They are scarred, calloused, ingrained with dirt that won't wash off until spring. But they are warm. He rubs them together slowly, a sound like dry leaves. It is a gesture of satisfaction. He is warm enough. And tonight, enough is a victory. We are deep in the night now. The fire has burned down to a bed of pulsing, deep red coals. The shadows that danced earlier have lengthened and merged into a heavy, enveloping darkness. You are still sitting there, wrapped in your layers of wool, and you begin to understand that winter in the Middle Ages is not just a season, it is a mindset. It is a psychological state of dormancy. Just as the trees outside have pulled their sap down into their roots to survive the frost, the people inside have pulled their energy inward. There is a slowness to their thoughts, a deliberate reduction in ambition. To want too much in winter, to try to do too much, is a recipe for despair. And so the mind settles. It accepts the smallness of the world. The world has shrunk to the four walls of this room, the heat of the hearth, and the steady breathing of the family. You look over at the partition where the animals are kept. Earlier, they were just a source of background noise. Now, in the quiet, you perceive them differently. You realize that the boundary between human and animal is much thinner here. It is porous. The cow chewing its cud, a rhythmic, wet, grinding sound, is strangely soothing. It is the sound of life continuing. The animals are not just property. They are fellow passengers on this ship sailing through the frozen night. Their warm bodies. You can smell them, the sweet, grassy scent of the hay they eat, mixed with the sharper, ammonic tang of manure. In a modern context, this would be repellent. Here, it is simply the scent of biology, of heat generation. That cow is a living furnace, radiating a consistent 98 or 99 degrees of warmth into the shared air. Without her, the temperature in this room might drop below freezing by dawn. With her, it stays bearable. You feel a sudden surge of gratitude for that large, slow, breathing presence in the dark. It is time for sleep, but sleep here is different. It is not the solid 8-hour block of unconsciousness we strive for today. It is a segmented experience. Historians often speak of the first sleep and the second sleep. You watch as the family settles onto their pallets. The mattress is a sack of heavy linen stuffed with straw. It crunches when you lie on it. It is not soft, it resists your weight. It is lumpy and uneven, but it insulates. You lie down, pulling the heavy wool blanket up to your chin. The wool is scratchy against your neck, but that friction feels like warmth. You curl your legs up, instinctively assuming the fetal position to conserve core heat. The darkness is total. If you hold your hand up in front of your face, you cannot see it. This absolute absence of light changes how you think. There are no distractions, no glowing screens, no streetlights filtering through curtains. You are alone with your mind and the physical sensations of your body. You listen. You hear the wind buffeting the thatch, a low, moaning sound that emphasizes how safe you are inside. You hear the settling of the timber beams, cracking loudly in the cold like a rifle shot. You hear the rustle of a mouse in the straw. You drift into the first sleep. It is deep, exhausted, and heavy. But sometime in the dead of the night, perhaps around 2 or 3 a.m., you wake up. This is normal. The fire has dimmed to a faint gray ash with a red heart. The room is colder now. The air on your face feels sharp, biting. This waking period, the watch, is a time of quiet contemplation. You might hear a murmur of prayer from a family member. You might see a shadow move to the hearth to nudge a log, sending a brief shower of sparks up the chimney, illuminating the room for a split second before darkness rushes back in. This isn't insomnia, it's a natural rhythm. It is a time to check on the safety of the house, to listen for the distress of an animal, to simply exist in the quiet. Then, slowly, the cold drives you back under the covers, and you drift into the second sleep, which will carry you until the gray light of dawn. Let's think about health for a moment. You are lying there, breathing in the cold air, and you wonder about sickness. We often assume medieval peasants were constantly ill, fragile creatures. But looking at them, you see a different kind of strength. It is a survivor's strength. They possess a folk wisdom about the cold that we have forgotten. They know that damp is the real killer. Cold, dry air is manageable,
But wet clothes, wet feet, wet hair, these are mortal dangers. You recall seeing the drying rack above the fire earlier, the way every damp item was meticulously hung to bake in the rising heat. They know to keep the chest warm. They use pungent herbs, dried sage, rosemary, lavender, scattered in the bedding not just for the smell, but because they believe these scents purify the miasma, the bad air. While their germ theory is non-existent, the practice works. Strong-smelling herbs often repel fleas and lice, the vectors of disease. Their superstitions are often practical solutions wrapped in myth. You also think about the stillness. We are addicted to stimulation. Here, boredom is a survival strategy. Burning calories on anxiety or unnecessary entertainment is wasteful. So, they have mastered the art of doing nothing. They can sit for hours staring into the fire, their minds idling in neutral. It is a form of meditation born of necessity. You try it. You lie there in the dark, letting your thoughts unspool. You stop worrying about tomorrow's emails or next week's deadlines because they don't exist. There is only the cold, the wool, and the wait for the sun. It is incredibly restful. It is a deep, cellular rest that modern humans rarely experience. Morning comes slowly. It does not arrive with an alarm clock, but with a gradual shift in the quality of the darkness. The black turns to charcoal, then to a bruised blue. The cold is at its peak now. This is the hardest moment of the daily cycle. The thermal battery of the house has drained. The stones are cold. The fire is dormant. You can see your breath puffing out in white clouds against the gloom. The condensation from breathing all night has frozen on the inside of the door hinge. You watch the first person rise. It requires a supreme act of will. They throw off the heavy warmth of the blanket and step onto the packed earth floor. You can almost feel the shock of the cold through their feet. They move quickly, not with panic, but with efficiency. There is no lingering. The first task is always the same, the fire. It is the life source. They kneel before the gray mound of ash. This is a moment of tension. Did the embers survive? If the fire has gone out completely, it is a disaster. It means striking flint and steel with frozen fingers, blowing on damp tinder, struggling against the chill. But usually, the care taken the night before pays off. They rake back the ash to reveal the glowing red heart. They add a handful of dry straw, a few twigs. They blow gently. The smoke curls up, white and thick. Then, a crackle. A small yellow flame licks up. The house has a pulse again. The day begins not with coffee and a shower, but with chores. The animals must be fed before the humans. The door is unbarred, a heavy wooden sound, and opened. The light that spills in is blindingly white. It is snow light. The world outside has been reset. The familiar mud of the yard is gone, replaced by a pristine, frozen landscape. The cold rushes in through the open door, aggressive and sharp, smelling of ice and ozone. It chases the stale, smoky air of the night into the corners. You watch them eat their morning meal. It is leftover pottage from the night before, perhaps warmed up, or a hunk of dense, dark rye bread. It is hard to chew, you have to work at it, but as it hits the stomach, it acts as fuel. You realize in this life you are acutely aware of the connection between food and heat. You eat to burn. You are stoking your own internal engine. As the family disperses to their tasks, some to the barn, some to fetch water from the frozen well, some to spin wool by the strengthening fire, you take a step back. You look at this scene. To a modern eye, it looks like poverty. It looks like hardship, and it is. There is no denying the roughness of the skin, the patches on the clothes, the ever-present threat of a bad harvest. But there is something else here, too. There is resilience. There is a profound competence. These people are not victims of their environment, they are masters of it. They know exactly how to thatch a roof to shed the snow. They know exactly how to layer wool to trap the heat. They know how to read the wind, how to bank a fire, how to sit still enough to conserve energy. They have an intimacy with the physical world that we have completely lost. We adjust a thermostat, they adjust their lives. Standing there, you feel a strange sense of calm. You realize that boring is just another word for peaceful. It is a life stripped of the unnecessary. There is no noise here, only signal. The signal says stay warm, stay fed, stay together. As you prepare to leave this